Hello and welcome to your first steps in Unity. In this tutorial series, we will create the small game you can see in the video, build it step by step in easy to digest portions. At the end of the series, you should be able to navigate the editor, know about assets, game objects and their components. You will have created your very first animations with the Unity animator, wrote your first C# scripts and integrated a little bit of UI to finally build the game as a complete product. Let's jump right in with the Unity app. We open it and then we verify that we have an Unity installation on the system. This block installs holds all your current installations. If you don't have any, you should add one. I would recommend using the newest official release, which is in my case 2021.9, and select the modules you want to install. For our tutorial, you will need the Microsoft Visual Studio and the Windows build support, as well as the documentation. But if you're planning to build on iOS or Android or anywhere else, you can select those modules as well, of course. Then you can accept the current license agreement and install it. And after a little while, you should have another install here. So we verified that our installations are up to date. So now we can head on over to projects and add a new one. In this window, we can select which template suits our needs the best, and we will select the two-dimensional. Keep in mind, all of them can be achieved through other, manipulating the current template. So even if you want to use the universal render pipeline, you don't have to select this template. You can always implement it at a later point in time. For now, let's give it a name. I would go with tutorial and your first steps. Steps. If we hit create, the Unity will create all the necessary assets in the background. This will take some time. Roughly 1 minute and 20 seconds later, the project is created. On your machine, it could always be a bit faster, but the first thing we should do would be to create the very same view we see here. So head on over to Window, Layout, and select the default layout. This is a good way to start. On a later point in time, we can rearrange those windows if we want to better suit our needs. And what I always like to do is use the dark mode. So I had to edit preferences and general. Here I select the dark skin, which is now available for the for free users in the 2020 version. Now that we all have the same view, we should take a closer look at the different windows we are using here. First up, the hierarchy, which holds basically every element we are using in the current scene. Right now, of course, it's pretty empty with only the camera inside, but if we compare it to the final product, we can see every different thing we are using. We have the camera as well, but also the player. We have the level itself, all the elements in the level. We have an UI. We have everything that defines the level. Next up, the project window right below here. This holds everything, every asset we are using in our project. So if we're using a sprite or a C# script or something, it would go in here. It's always a good idea to keep it a bit organized because over the time and depending on how big your levels are or how big your project is, this can amass really a lot of stuff. And if you don't start to organize from the very beginning, it's pretty hard to keep track over everything. Again, let's compare it to the final product. We have not only the scenes, which are basically in every project automatically created, but also scripts, sprites, prefabs, and animations. Whatever these are, we will talk about these in a bit or in a later project. But let's just keep in mind that we have multiple different things inside here, and to keep them organized, we use folders. So if we head to the scripts folder, we see all the scripts we're going to create during the course of the series. Right behind the project window is the console. which shows all the information we are logging in the console. If we use third-party assets or something, they can log here as well. But for now, let's skip it because it's not that important when we are going to use it. I will talk about it in a bit more detailed way. Now let's talk about the inspector for a bit. The inspector holds basically every information associated with the object we're currently selecting. This can be a folder in the assets folder. So if I go to sprites, we can see here that it says simply sprites, default assets. I can open it and go inside the sprites. But if we select a game object, like maybe the camera, we can see information about the game object itself. So the camera has a solid black color in the final product. It has a transform. It has an audio listener. I said it has many, many different things, all inside the or associated with the game object itself. If we head over to the demo scene, the simple one, and select the camera, we see it's pretty much the same. It has a different background color, but we can change it pretty fast. And other than that, a few of the transform informations are different, but let's not worry about that. And just keep in mind that the information we want to manipulate or we want to use are all stored inside the game object, and the inspector lets us see and manipulate them. So we talked about everything on the side, but what's about the thing in the middle? Well, it's the scene view. So this is where you create your game. You can move around, you can look at stuff, you can drag your game objects inside, but to get a better understanding, let's switch to the final product again. Uh, Here we can see everything inside the level. We have the different obstacles, we have the collectibles, and we have the goal on the very far right. Now, if you're wondering how I moved, it's right click and I can drag along the axis or wherever I actually want. Now keep in mind the cool thing about Unity is that when you reach the border, so the far left corner for example, Unity lets you keep dragging to the side forever. So it's repositioning your mouse to the right side if you are dragging to the left and want to keep dragging to the left, but you already hit the end. So again, it switches to the right and we can keep on dragging. The same goes for right, up, down, whatever you want. And like this, we can pretty much use the right click in our 2D scene to go anywhere we want. But of course, this would be a tiring task if we are very close to the objects. We can change that with the mouse wheel. So if we scroll in very far, we see the floor way too big to be honest. And now we could scroll like forever and ever and ever, but it wouldn't really uh, tell us anything. So let's scroll back out again with the mouse wheel. And we're back at this side. So this is a bit annoying to do this every time, so it works for a few simple things. But if we want to, for example, snap to the goal or see the goal in the middle of the scene view, we can simply use the hierarchy window and double click the goal, and the designer just moves to it with as best fitted as it can. And then you can simply rearrange a little bit to achieve the view we want. So if we double click on the structure holding every level object, it zooms out to give us a better understanding, and we can now go to the part we want to manipulate next. The last thing we need to talk about is the game view itself. This is the view the user or the player would see at that point in time. So it's a combination of maybe multiple cameras, it's maybe a minimap, a user interface, whatever you can think of in any game, that's what the game view is for. So it's not a representation of the things we see in the scene view, but a representation of what the player sees. So in our case, it's not only these obstacles or collectibles, but also the user interface, which is rendered on top of the current game. So if I switch over to the game view, we can see the score, the time, and the button we hit to start the game. Now keep in mind that we can also hit the play button. We would automatically switch on over to the game view itself and can actually play the game. So if I start, the game can be simply played. But you might notice that the game or the designer is tinted in a specific color. That's because all changes you do during the run of the game view are temporary. And to keep in mind that these changes are really temporary, and we don't try to save something which isn't actually savable, the designer is tinted. So if I play again and now decide, okay, it's a smart idea to basically delete our user interface, it would still work. I can't say go, but it's still the game. The animation is working. And now stop playing. We see the user interface is back again. So we have to remind ourselves that every change we do in the game view is only temporary. It's something many fall for, and therefore suitable color is very important. You can change the color you're using under preferences and colors, and it's the general play mode tint. So it could be anything else. I choose this color because, yes, you could always choose a red color, but red is a bit too aggressive for my taste. So I'm going with a more, well, I don't know what it's called, color, to display. I'm in the game view and not currently designing the game. I think that's it for the first video. We talked about different windows inside the Unity editor. Now keep in mind, this is only a very small portion of the windows available. We have many, many more. We are going to talk about a few of them in one of the next videos. But first, we are going to create the sprites which we want to use as a game object for the floor, for the player, for whatever. I'm going to use the GIMP image manipulation program. I don't know if you know it. It's a free program where you can manipulate images, but of course the standard Windows Paint would work. Also, any simple image program would work. So if you find one online, it's totally enough for our next video, where we are only creating two simple sprites, using them or importing them into the project, and start creating our very first game. Thanks for watching, and see you guys next time.